Hello and welcome. We are here for yet another module of the Get Unstuck program. I am here with Randy Berlin. Dr. Randy Berlin, how are you?
I'm absolutely wonderful. It's really good to be with you again.
That's great to hear. Thank you so much for being here. I am Jess Genevieve Brown, and I am going to walk you through today's 3 topics. First, we have why you need a higher power, and then we'll tap into consciousness. And then we'll discover how life force energy plays into all this. All right, Randy, can you talk to us about why we need a higher power?
One of the challenges for people who go into recovery, so we're talking about recovery now, but in recovery, and they go to 12-step programs, and you can have a 12-step program for just about anything. For some people, they have a lot of resistance to this idea of a higher power, which then almost always gets associated with God. And then that takes you to religion. And depending on what people's experience with religion is, could be just a complete shutdown immediately. Could be that because there's been abuse happen related to the church or that discipline, then there's anger and hostility. And then there's those with extremely, focused scientific minds that if you can't see it, touch it, eat it, then it doesn't exist. And and that you just live your life and then you go back into the earth and you go back in and you become, fertilizer for whatever else is going to grow there. And then, like I said, with the people who have had a horrible experience in relationship to a higher power or trying to trust. And so certainly anybody that's got some of these things that are stuck in that happen to be addictive by nature, almost always they have issues of trust. And because their life experience has been such that the power higher than them, usually parents or teachers or whatever, may have very well been the source of most of their misery. And then if you have that as your childhood experience, then when you start talking about being open to something bigger than yourself, then the shutdown happens immediately. Like, well, wait a minute, I've had to learn to take care of myself. I'm self-reliant. I do it all myself. I don't do any, I've had to do that to survive. Then it's, why do I want to let go of that? Well, the reason you want to let go of it is because you're stuck. And if self-reliance was enough, then we wouldn't be having this conversation. So consequently, we're looking at getting unstuck. We're not trying to prove anything other than there's certain concepts, tools that I have found useful for people to be able to move past where it is they're stuck. And so a higher power seems to be important for that because by definition, you're saying my best thinking got me here. My best thinking got me to this course. And the reason I'm at this course is because I can't figure out a way out of whatever it is I'm stuck in. And if I could do it, then I wouldn't need this. But I can't. So we're asking for help. And by definition, a higher power or that concept of something greater than yourself is an attempt to be open to new information and become teachable, that maybe there's new ways to look at things. Maybe there's new ways to operate in life. And so that requires a new model. And so I'm asking, for patience here and understanding that this is an exploration. And I'm tossing out the things that I have found to work. And, in our secular world, it's, some people will claim that the psychologist or psychology has become the new religion for a vast number of people, and that they will believe in a therapist rather than going to the priest or a minister or, the synagogue. And consequently, then you go into a higher power, but you're going to somebody that's got a psychological base primarily, usually. And we're asking to go a little bit beyond that. Because in psychology, you're still left with this is a good thing and this is a bad thing. You're still left with the duality. And for us to get beyond the duality that this is good or this is bad, because that's part of how we get stuck, is to be able to move to that field of all possibilities, or that construct that says, wait a minute, let's be open. Maybe this is good, or maybe it's bad. Any of you who've had, troubling experiences in life, and you've been able to move through those with some success, will say that maybe this horrible thing that happened was one of the best things that ever happened to me. So something you would never have wished on yourself, which would be considered a bad thing, then you have an experience that you learned something from that experience about yourself that actually then you saw, wait a minute, I would have never learned this thing over here if that thing over there hadn't happened first. So is it good to have horrible things happen so that you can learn from them and be a better person, or do we want to avoid them all? So let's just move outside of that realm, because that gets us stuck, and move into the realm of, let me see, let me be open to possibilities. Maybe this idea of God or higher power is something that I could make use of. And, some people have a God that's like a Santa Claus God. So you wish for all these things that you want. And then the idea is, well, maybe if I was a good boy or girl, I'll get what I'm asking for Santa Claus. Or if I'm a bad boy or girl, then I won't get any of my presents that I want to get, or the things that I get. So a lot of people that have trouble with this higher power, or had using prayer, a lot of things, horrible things have happened to people, and they prayed for them to go away, and they didn't go away. And so then it doesn't work. So I'm asking all of these experiences to be set aside, whether it's been a wonderful experience or not, or you're a scientist and say it's all baloney. Then I want us to be able to do some personal research based on experience, and then you become your own research project. You decide to try something new out that you don't believe will work, but you're going to do it anyway because somebody's asked you to. And then you find out, lo and behold, something that you for sure was not going to be of any help actually became very helpful. So some of the things we need to do to get unstuck is change how we perceive things. And the places we put an idea or a construct and make it good or bad and reject it or don't like it or avoid it, and say, wait a minute, I want to be open and to whatever might be coming my way. So consequently, this higher power, this idea of an open mind, being teachable, is just another way to describe a higher power. For some people, nature is their higher power. So they love nature, and they love all aspects of nature. And so that nature is this creation, this creative force that makes all kinds of things happen, makes winds, makes waves, makes, weather changes. It makes all kinds of things happen, tornadoes. And we would probably almost all agree that nature and the influences of nature are outside of our control. And so then we start looking at, well, is there anything else outside of my control? Well, really, trying to change other people, you can manipulate them, you can threaten them, you can scare them, and they might do some of the things you want them to do. But basically, what's happening inside of them is they don't feel controlled. They just feel manipulated or scared. Then they might change their behaviors. But that's not the same thing as saying, I really ultimately don't have any control. Somebody I love with, unless I'm going to really try to, use all kinds of really unusual things to try to make them do what I want them to do, then I can't control anybody. And then places and things, that there's certain things that I cannot change. And the Serenity Prayer is one of the prayers that's really an integral part of 12-step recovery. And it basically just says, God, grant me serenity. So what he's asking for, what we're asking for, is the opportunity to learn how to get quiet. And because when I get quiet, then my mind gets more open. When my mind's more open, solutions I might not have come up with otherwise maybe come to me intuitively, or just as a flash, or just as a new way to look at things. And you go, oh, aha, these kinds of experiences, and you make the shift. But usually those come out of quiet. And, some of the most powerful creations, Einstein's creation on relativity and not his creation of it, but a number of the scientists that have come up with their ideas have either come through a mistake that got made, or it came through a vision, dreams. Einstein says most of his stuff came to him through dreams. So there's this tapping into something that's not our conscious mind. And we know that the unconscious has a big influence. It runs a whole lot of us, our habits and patterns that we get used to, and then we get familiar, and then we just do them. And we, do these things in a certain way, and they become familiar, and then they want to do them that way without even thinking about it. And so we're looking at how do we work with the unconscious, this place that taps into all our patterns and habits. How do we tap into this place that's inside of us that has an infinite possibility of expansion and dimensions beyond understanding? And part of that is maybe asking for prayer. So when I can remember one time that this person was talking about how they just absolutely had no faith and they didn't believe anything, and they were in excruciating pain, and they said, okay, God, if you're out there, would you please show me, convince me something? And sometimes that is helped, but this person had an experience where everything in their body just became peaceful out of nowhere, just was gone. And so what was that about? How did that happen? I don't know. But for many people, when they have their heart open and they're asking whoever they're asking for help, seems to touch things and move things and shift things that are undefinable and nobody can really explain, which is the act of, having a faith in something bigger than yourself. And that creative force, that life force is just in everything. So in the 12-step programs, I'm going to touch on this for a minute, just because we've used some of the ideas from the 12 steps in our work. And one of the steps is the 4th step, and where you go back and look at everything that disturbs you, everything that's frightening for you, and everything that you've done to others that was problematic and that you feel some guilt or shame about. And that you look at those things and make a list of them, not to depress yourself, but to get it as a starting place of, if I was going to clean up, let me look at all the things in the house that need to be cleaned up. Well, the closets. Well, the basement. Well, let's see. Oh, maybe the attic. Oh, maybe, one of the bedrooms is completely packed with stuff. The garages are full. You can't even get the car in. So you say, okay, this is a mess, and there's all kinds of things. And I'd like to live with more space. I'd like to have more breathing room. I'd like to be open to be able to have more use of my home, which sometimes symbolically is created and used as the body. The body and the home kind of have some similarities in their structure and in their ways of being. So I want to clean up the house. Well, what we're doing is we're cleaning up the house that happens to be our human body. And in this human body are all kinds of experiences that have been stored. We don't know where. We can't find them. Nobody can locate where they are. But they seem to show up in the body in different areas. And that if we start to clean out, then some of these areas will come into our mind. And sometimes people will have pain in their body. Sometimes they'll have a pain in the neck. I remember one person that had a pain in the neck and was just miserable while we were doing this workshop. And so when we did some work on that, it came to be that that person was carrying a traumatic rape experience with some, friends of her brother. And she was in a closet with her neck twisted sideways, kicking and screaming and trying to get these guys to leave her alone. And that experience never really got processed. And so it got carried in the neck. And so when we were doing work and cleaning things up out of the body that were traumatic, then this thing came. So how does that work? I don't know, but there's somehow it does. And it's consistent. And so again, that's kind of a power, something that happened beyond my understanding. So the steps, we do the 4th step. So, and that one is one of acknowledging these things and, look at this and look at my part and whatever it is that happened to me. Not to blame the victim. This is not about that. And we talked about it before. This is about just acknowledging that maybe somewhere along the way I made a decision that had an impact on what happens to me. So in that situation, I'm taking some responsibility. So the 4th step is there for that purpose. Then we move into the 6th and 7th step. In those areas, we're looking at character defects, and we're going to have some of that as part of our program. Looking at those characteristics that you use to survive that are now problematic and keeping you stuck. Maybe it's dishonesty with others. Maybe it's dishonesty with yourself. Maybe it's a denial form. Maybe it's some other thing. Maybe it's repressed that you need to get to, and you need to bring it to the surface so you can consciously deal with it. So anyway, so those character defects are important as far as our survival. But then we're wanting to move beyond survival. You can stay stuck and survive. Usually, not always, but usually. But sometimes, if we want to live fully and we want to have some joy in life and have some fun in life and have some wonder, I guess we're going to need to be able to clean some stuff out of the way and be willing to, to explore and see what else is here. So that open-mindedness, so the character defects, yes, they're there, but they're usually habits that you got created to survive. And so rather than making them negative, we're going to just say they're habits, and we want to do them differently. We would like to, rather than being stingy and always worried about my getting mine, maybe I'll get to a place where I might want to be generous. Maybe I'd have something I feel like I'd like to give away rather than just hold on to. Some of these patterns and habits will change in this process without question. And there's evidence for it. And as long as you're willing to do what's being asked of you and explore it, and then when it's all said and done, if you want your old life back and your old habits back and all that, you can always have them. Misery will be refunded. There's no problem with that. Frustration can be refunded, but it doesn't have to be. And it could be that you could have it in a category that once in a while you're frustrated, once in a while you're this way or that way, but it's not an overwhelming feeling. So higher power. So then we go to the 8th and 9th step. And that's where we look at how to clean this up or how to make amends for the things we've done. So we're going to have that as part of the 4th step and 8th and 9th step. We're just tying those two together in our program because they're very, very powerful tools for getting rid of the shame, getting rid of the false impressions. And then we go into the 10th step, which is that idea that we're just going to keep things cleaned up as we go. So now we've cleaned the whole house out. If it's like with people who pay off their debts, they borrow a bunch of money, pay off all their debts, but they haven't changed any habits or their ways of thinking about money or things and stuff that they need. And they compulsively then fill the credit cards back up. And some period of time in the future, they're back where they were. Sometimes that happens with people that have been drinking. They stop for a while, but at some point, maybe they decide, oh, well, I don't think I have a problem anymore. So let me do this and go back to old habits. And then these things come back. So we're wanting to be able to say, no, I want to keep it cleaned up as I go now. I want to do these new habits of, when I think I can do it later. If you're a procrastinator, later never comes usually. So just remember, if you lie to yourself and say, I can do this later. Yeah, but will you? Will you? Or you most likely, based on all the evidence, all the research you have about your life, have found that usually either gets put off the very last second, and then you have an energy rush, and or you don't do it. You forget about it. So what I found for people that procrastinate, and that's one of the ways people stay stuck, I'll do it later, I'll do it later, I'll do it later. Then you do it. The second question is, yes, I can do it later. And can I do it now? And if now is an option, do it. And again, I would ask you to do your own research. You evaluate. If you do it anyway, even though you can do it later, see how you feel about that. What's the experience like? Is it a good one? Does it matter at all? And then if you want to try the other one again, put it off till later. And then you just decide which system, which habit pattern, which belief, which one works for you. And this is not about making somebody do something. We're going to have you have experiences. We're going to offer you experiences so that you make the decision, is this helpful? Is this valuable? Is it worthwhile? So this higher power, and then ultimately it's about getting into a mindset, and this is where the 11th step comes in, of just kind of being open to be guided. Having faith in yourself that you can live life and make decisions, respond to life, respond to what's happening around you and others, and be able to trust that you're going to have somewhat good judgment. And, or if you make a mistake, clean it up and learn from it. Or if you do it right, take it and learn from it. Either way, you get to learn from it. And then ultimately, the 12th step is what's so beautiful is that it's if this process has worked for you, if you've been given a life beyond your dreams, then you get to give it away and you can share it with others, whatever it is you've been given. So we're not doing a research project that somebody does in a factory or inside of a lab. It's going to be done in your life. And so that you have evidence based on experience whether this has some value to you. And I have found having a mind that's open to possibilities seems to work better than anything else I've ever run across. And anyway, so that's where this concept of higher power or nature, or if you want to see how much you're in control of or what you have control of, go down to the ocean or scream up at the clouds and tell them you want them to go a different direction, or tell the waves you'd like them to be 3 feet but not 6 feet, but you don't want the 1-footers, and just go out and scream at the ocean and see if the ocean cares and see if it gets bothered with your desire to control. And there's this acceptance that comes in with this that is part of surrender, part of being open to be guided. And it's not surrendering to somebody else's will. It's surrendering to new ideas that might work. It's surrendering to new considerations that might be of value. Being open. So just know that these are all, part of why I have found this construct of a higher power to be of great benefit. And if you really look at making amends for some of the things you've done in the past, I can tell you it requires calling on others. You need a community, you need support, you need others to call upon and say, oh my gosh, I've got this thing and I'm supposed to go tell this person that I stole from them, or I did this and I don't have the courage to do it. I'm afraid they're going to be mad at me. You get with somebody who has had the experience and they can share with you and say, yeah, I know you feel like that, but what I'd like you to do is just to get quiet, be open, have faith, and take the action and then see what happens. Doesn't mean somebody, when you make a mention, they're going to be happy to see you. They might not be. They might say, I don't want to see you again. And so, okay, but you've done what you can. You're willing to do what you can do. And they might say, oh my God, I can't believe it. I didn't even realize it, or I forgot about it, or it's just nice to see you. And I can hear that you're changing your life. And it's really nice to experience that with you. Thank you for sharing that with me. So you don't know. The point is, it's a wonder. But you get to have people who support you and encourage you. So that can come from others, or it can come from this open-mindedness that said, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm willing, because my life matters enough to me to have things change, to get unstuck, that I'm willing to do some things that are kind of scary, or I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I'm going to do it anyway. Because I've got support and I hear other people have done the same thing. And the results almost always were positive. Not always, but almost always. And even if it's not, you've done what you can do.
I love how you describe the higher power. For me, going through this process with your help, I always assumed that higher power had to do with a God. And that's not something that I had ever been brought up with or that made sense to me. And the way that you explained it just shifted everything for me. Just realizing that it's about remaining open to being guided. And it doesn't have to be by someone or something, but just being open to tapping into something that isn't my subconscious mind or my conscious mind. I love the idea of just being willing to remain open. And that's what this higher power is. I think that's such a great way to explain it. So thank you for that definition. And also for clarifying how the 12 steps plays into this, which makes sense that those 12 steps would lead us to this higher power. And now, can you tell us a little bit about how consciousness plays into this?
Yes. Well, it fits in with what we've just been talking about. in one way that's really clear to me. And it's that having an open mind and having an expanded mind is a conscious shift from thinking I know what's best, something has to be a certain way, believing that's all true, and operating and trying to make it happen and try to make that the way everything is. That's a closed mind. An open mind is how consciousness works, and consciousness works in an expanding way. It opens things up. It goes to infinity, if you will, so that consciousness is infinite. It is where everything comes from. There has to be a thought comes into your conscious mind before anything can materialize for you that you create. And then that thought then requires energy if you're going to make it happen. So you have a thought about you want to make a house, and you have a design you have in mind. And so those are two thoughts. And the next side is, what do I do to make it happen? Well, maybe I have to get some money together, or maybe I have to be willing to see if I can do some of the building myself, or get some people to do the work for me, or I'm coming with this thing, but it all came from a thought out of consciousness. I want to have a house. So here I am. So moving into that and then looking at that as a construct of everything that exists came from some kind of consciousness that allowed something to manifest. Even if there's a lot of randomness to it, there's also a synchronicity to it. They're both are true. We're moving beyond duality. Everything that gets created is duality because it has a positive and negative charge. If it doesn't have a positive and negative charge, it won't stay together. Okay, so everything that's created has a positive and negative charge, but not one of them isn't good, one's bad. You know, when they've evaluated areas and looked at stress levels in the environment, they call it a positive ions that are stress related. However, the negative ions are what absorb those positive and balance them up and stabilize them. So if you go to along the ocean where the waves are breaking, you'll see a concentration of these negative ions. If you go to streams or waterfalls or things where there's an intense kind of breaking and blasting of things apart, there's concentrations. If you go to extremely high elevations in the mountains, it creates the same kind of negative ions which absorb stress. So if you go into a high elevation, one of the things people find, gosh, it's really quiet. When it's really quiet, somehow there's not the bombardment to my sensory system, and it's more peaceful. So I've relieved stress by being in a high elevation. I think it's why in the past that, spiritual teachers from the East particularly have mostly gone to high elevations. That's where they develop their skills or use their skills because it's so quiet. There's very few distractions. Being down in the world, we got lots of distractions, and it's much harder to be able to stay with this, consciousness, it being not focused on this thing or that box or that box or that box or that box, because those are what we're called to do. And so consciousness is that thing that everything's included. Consciousness is something that's bigger than all of us and that's bigger than everything. So when we're doing our homework together, we do a little meditation where we go into that expanded consciousness to just notice how large consciousness can be. So if I have my mind is bigger than my body, then it's very different than if I'm fixated on my body and some part of my body. Makes it much harder to be able to deal with pain or suffering or anything that's happening in the body without ability to expand on it and stretch it out and open it up. And it seems to be diminished. So consciousness is where everything comes from. Consciousness is something that can be explored, and it's a way of being that allows us to be more present with what's happening, more present for new ideas, and to be able to have peace at the same time being engaged with whatever it is we're doing. If my mind is open and I'm here, then I'm just in wonder. I wonder what's going to happen this next minute, this next moment, this next moment, this next moment. I'm in wonder. I'm in curiosity. I'm on an adventure. If I close it all down, then I am going exactly where I think I should go. I'm going there and I'm not going anywhere else. So I'll think about a bunch of other things while I'm going there. The problem with not being in the present or not being able to accept the present as it is, it robs us of satisfaction. I cannot be satisfied if I'm trying to do more than one thing at a time. If I'm doing one thing and I'm just doing that thing, drinking a cup of tea, I'm drinking a cup of tea, I'm swallowing the tea as I take the cup and I put it, I am having a complete satisfying experience, not because of tea, but because I'm actually drinking tea and being with the process of drinking tea. Then it's a satisfying experience. If I'm sitting here with you, talking to you in this moment, and I'm 100% in, it's a satisfying experience. If I'm partially here and partially think I'd rather be somewhere else, what am I going to have for lunch? What is somebody else doing today? All those things, I'm partially satisfied. And your experience with me will be partially satisfied because I'm not really present. So any of you who have that sense of being with somebody who's never home, meaning that they're always gone somewhere else, that it's very dissatisfying to the person who's trying to engage with somebody who's not there or who's doing other things while they're trying to talk to you. It's very off-putting for most of us. And so to have satisfying relationships, have satisfying experiences, it's really important to be present. That is all part of consciousness. So that I'm consciously present, I'm consciously making a decision to be present because it's the most satisfying thing I can do. So consciousness is ultimately everything, and it's a critical part of the work we're going to be doing because I want you all to learn, and we'll teach you things that you can do through meditation, breath work, to be able to be more present and more open at the same time. There's a sense of, with the breath work and with meditation, you have a sense of being present and relaxed. Usually people get being present when they do high risk activities. If you do a high risk activity, you are 100% in because it's too scary not to. It's too life threatening not to. So if I'm cruising along 200 miles an hour, I'm paying attention. I'm 100% in. If I'm jumping off a cliff, I'm paying attention. Whatever it is, I just need to. So what we're going to learn through this, and one of the ways to get unstuck is that I don't have to have tremendous intensity or distress to be able to make changes. If I stay stuck there, this is not about wallowing in misery. This is about moving into it. If it's carried, feel it, let it go. That's a conscious decision. That's related to consciousness. So consciousness is the foundation of everything as far as I'm concerned.
I love how you've explained that concept of consciousness and tied it together with the higher power. It makes so much sense why we would need to first understand consciousness and then create space for us to spend some time in consciousness. And I know that life force energy has a lot to do with this topic as well. And it kind of ties everything together. Can you tell us a little bit about life force energy?
Yeah, I'd love to. This is exciting for me. One of the things that I found so valuable is within consciousness, there's also this ability to start to have some sense that we're part of some creative entity that is expansive, is detailed, is everything included. And what happens with that is that it needs some kind of juice to make it all happen. So when that first cell, so the sperm and the egg come together, and there's this moment when the egg invites the sperm in, and then the sperm explodes and all the DNA and all those things that get expressed that way. And then there's a cell that gets created. And that cell starts with and begins with the life force, the prana. If the life force is not in that first cell, you don't grow. It's required. So life force is amazingly important and powerful just to have as a concept, but it's also nice to be able to just notice how this works. So anyway, everything in nature comes out of this life force. This life force is a manifestation, it's the energy that comes out of consciousness into everything that materializes. So because of that, we're wanting to get unstuck. And it's going to require us to have some, we call it prana, is one way. Ki is in another. Chi is another. But if for our purposes, we're going to call it prana, and that it's the life force that it permeates everything that exists. If there isn't a life force, it doesn't materialize. And so, with that life force, there's ways that we can enhance that. And so, I like to think about, okay, how can I enhance this prana, this life force, so that I want to live rather than I want to survive? How can I enhance that life force so that I want to explore? I want to understand more rather than I want to hide and be safe and not have to do anything scary. I want to have that life force so that I can develop and grow and expand and share with others in my life. So, how can you do that? Life force prana seems to gets enhanced with two or three things. Actually, more than that, but we'll go through a few of them. One of them is good foods. And food, the highest prana foods are the ones that are green. The highest prana foods are the ones that are closest to the earth. So the closer you are to coming right out of Mother Earth with the nutrients and minerals, hopefully that's there available, comes into the food. Then I take that into my body and it gets processed and it gives me the maximum benefit of energy. And so the prana force that comes with food is something I can consciously decide about. If I want to eat some fast foods that are all, processed and fried, and, I'll get things that I can crave and they may comfort me, but they don't nourish me. They don't enhance me in any way. They just give me that comfort. So you get heavy. This way, with high prana food, you get lighter because the life force is lifting you. So we have that is one of the ways. Good sleep, having good night's sleep, rest on a regular basis, to then take that restful state into activity is extremely important. It's a great place to develop and raise your prana. If you have a good night's sleep and you wake up in the morning and you feel alert and alive, it's pretty easy to get excited about going into the world. If you wake up and you haven't had enough sleep, you've been restless all night, you've been wrestling and turning, and you're not getting good rest, then it makes it harder to drudge into the day. And so life force is valuable in that way. Another way I think about it is that if I do into meditation, what seems to come out of that is this thing I mentioned a while ago, was a relaxed alertness. And it's an energy form that allows me to be present, to be relaxed, and be ready to go, be ready to participate. And so meditation, and then there's these breathing exercises we're going to teach you about how to enhance your prana through the breath and how to alter your emotions through the breath, because every emotion has a breathing pattern associated with it. So if you're anxious, you tend to be more shallow. If you're angry, it might be a little, more hearty, if you will. If it's sadness, you might go, and there's different states that come with each of these breaths. So we're going to learn about that. But if we do this in a certain way, it seems to really lift. Meditation will lift us. Good food will lift us. Good rest, and also good company. Maybe you've noticed being around people who are positive, unless you're just really irritated and you don't like people that are positive, then they're just an aggravation. But if you happen to be open at all to people that are happy and in a good mood and having fun, then you will kind of get something from that. You will kind of get drawn into it. We call it contact high back at one time in my life. And it was just like you just being with those people, you seem to have some of the benefit of what's going on with them. If you get around a bunch of people that are really negative, down, irritated, depressed, angry, then you pick up on that energy and you'll kind of go with that. So, good company. And being in states where I talked about before, along the ocean, waterfalls, mountains, besides relieving stress, it also enhances your prana. So those two kind of go together. And so there's different ways that prana can be raised. And we want to be conscious about that. So in our consciousness, we say, hey, if I want to feel alive and vital and vibrant for life, how do I do that? Do I eat a bunch of stuff from one of the fast food restaurants? Or do I eat some foods that are a little lighter, not processed, unprocessed foods, but that are, able to nourish me in the most vital ways because it's the closest to the earth. The cows eat the plants so that then they bring the value of the plants into the body, and we eat the cows because then we can get the value of the plant through the cow. Or we can eat the stuff and come straight from the ground and get the value directly. Our equipment is designed to do that. It's capable of doing that. So this life force, and one of the things I always think about over the years is how powerful this force of life is. So you get somebody that's been, say you have somebody that's been drinking a lot for a lot of years, or doing a lot of really the toxic drugs, and their life force may be very weak when they stop, or maybe they'll go to death or be right on the edge of death. Their life force is low. What happens though, if you stop poisoning yourself, you stop pouring these things in your body that are destructive, what happens is you start to feel better. Lo and behold, if I'm not poisoning myself, then I feel better. What a concept. And so this life force is so powerful. So I think about it. One time I was looking at this parking lot, and it was all asphalted over. And I was in this building for a lot of years. And so over time, what would happen is the asphalt would start to get some cracks. And what would happen when there was a little crack? Some little plant would start to grow out of that crack. And it starts to grow out of it. And if you don't asphalt it again, you don't put that poison on top of it again and kill everything, it's going to start to go. And if you leave it long enough, you'll have a hard time finding the parking lot because it'll be so full of growth and green and plants and life and trees and bushes and so on that you'll hardly even know it's there. And you see that in places where we've gone for looking at cultures that are ancient and been around for a long time. You see how the life force comes in. They have to clear all the life force out of the way, all these living things, to get to some of these places that are, that are ancient and so interesting to us because of cultures from before us. But nonetheless, that life force is always, so the life force just is always looking for an opportunity to come alive. And we're just going to give you suggestions. And when you're stuck, you're not getting new life force. You're spinning. You're not bringing in new juice. You're just going around and around and around and around with this habit and habit and habit that you don't seem to be able to get out of. So as you break out of this old habit, get unstuck, you're going to have more energy. And then you need to learn how to use that wisely. And so you get this new energy, stop drinking, start drugging, start doing things that are poisoning you, and then you start to eat well. If you don't eat well, if you get a bunch of junk, then your body will deteriorate and go in another direction that's harmful. It won't enhance your life force because you're not getting nourished. So your life force becomes alive. Everybody starts to feel better. Your thinking changes. Your decision making starts to change because you're not being so self-destructive. And all those things come together. And but that all comes out of that sense of wanting to be alive. The truth is, as far as the research has gone that I've seen, is that the vast majority of the people don't want to die, but they don't really want to live. There are a very small population of people who really want to live, and they go about life living it fully. And there's a group of people who really do want to die, and they do it. But the vast majority is in the middle here of people who don't want to die, but they're not sure how much they want of this life. How much is outside that comfort zone that says, oh, I don't know if I can do that one. That's too much for me. And you kind of come back to comfort, come back to comfort, come back to comfort. And so just knowing that part of this is not expanding into a way that's so scary that it freezes you, but being able to expand and grow in ways that allows you to stretch, stabilize, get comfortable, stretch, stabilize, get comfortable. And when I do it that way, then I'm more like how nature operates. A lot of this is that we've gotten so disconnected from nature, in my mind, that we don't operate in cycles. We don't operate in circles. We got stuck in this linear thinking that everything was there and it's all flat and it's only going one direction and that's all there is. As opposed to, wait a minute, it's in circles. Everything, you're looking around in nature, everything in circles or rhythms. The waves come, they go. They come, they go. The waves come and go. So nature, the clouds, the different kinds of climates, they're all in this process of constant movement. So when we get down to the life force and we get down to the cellular level, we realize that everything is changing. The illusion is that you're stuck, that you're not going anywhere. The truth is you can't help it. It's just a matter of whether you see it that way or not. Life is in a perpetual state of movement. And this life force is an essence of that. So we're in consciousness. We're open to a power greater than ourselves because we've expanded into it. And we know that there's a life force that keeps all of this juice going. And we're doing those things which enhance the life force. That's our intention here. And when you live like that, it's hard to stay stuck because you just have this energy that wants to live life fully.
Those are really powerful lessons that you've taught us today. Higher power, consciousness, life force energy. These are big concepts. And I love how these play into everything that we're teaching because the work that we're doing here is difficult. And depending on ourselves to do all of this work is hard. And it's a place where it's easy to get stuck. And many of us may recognize that we are stuck because we've depended on ourselves so much. And just the thought of tapping into consciousness and being willing to believe in something beyond ourselves, I think is so powerful, especially with life force energy. When you picture that being a thing that is a part of your life and building up your own energy, but also protecting your energy. When we do the chapter on boundaries, like that's a really big part of that too, right? Is you're putting in so much to build up your energy, to allow it to come into your life. And then we have to protect it and make sure that we don't give it away or lose it so that we can have all the life force energy that we need so that we remain unstuck and live these lives full of joy and fulfillment. So powerful. Thank you, Randy. This has been such a great lesson today.
Great.
For this week's homework, we have a writing exercise. So what you're going to do in your homework worksheet is do a little bit of brainstorming and free writing about your concept of a higher power. So what does a higher power mean to you? If you have a higher power, then maybe you would describe what traits this higher power has. Is it kind? Is it benevolent? It could be so many things. You might have a negative view of a higher power. You might have a scientific view of a higher power. You might not believe in a higher power at all. What we're asking you to do is write about that. Write about what your current existing thoughts and beliefs around a higher power are. And the reason that we're doing this is because the work that we're doing here asks us to set aside what we know and believe to be true. And in order to be able to do that, we need to know what it is that we think about this higher power. So dive in, think about what it is that you believe a higher power is. And then the work that we'll do together during the group call is considering whether we can just take this belief that we have about what a higher power is and just set it aside so that we can explore new things. You can take it back if you want to. We're not asking you to discard your beliefs or to change what you know to be true. We're just asking you to set it aside in this time and place, in this space where we're doing this work, so that you can allow other things to come in, to consider other possibilities. So that is the homework for this week. On this week's group call, we will discuss the homework that you put together. So we're going to have a group discussion around our varying opinions, thoughts, and beliefs when it comes to a higher power. So please come to that group call prepared to share a few thoughts. We will also be doing a guided meditation on this group call. So we will guide you through the process of this meditation, and we'll teach you how to do this on your own at home. The purpose of this meditation is to just get quiet, to create a space of openness, to tap into the expanse so that you can open your mind and relax. Just let yourself get quiet. It's a really important tool to be able to use, and we will teach you how to do that on this week's call. Thank you so much for showing up. You did the thing. This is the hardest part, is showing up. And now we'll do the work together. We are here for you. Please let us know if there's anything that you need. Feel free to reach out. Thank you so much. Take care.